Go ahead and get started. All right, welcome everyone to Badgers Exploring Environmental Careers Virtual Trek. Just so you all know, I'm going to be looking at a couple different screens today, so I may not be making the best eye contact at all times, but we are really excited to have you here. So thank you so much for joining us. We do have a poll that we're going to start with, so we're going to go ahead and get that launched. And this poll is specifically for students. So Kiana, thank you so much for launching this. There's just 3 questions, and we do this poll because it gives alumni and presenters an opportunity to learn a little bit about you and to know who's in the room. So if you are a student, we would appreciate, or a recent alum, we would appreciate you taking a few moments to answer the questions in the poll. We'll give it just about a minute or so for folks to respond. And Kiana, you can keep me updated on how we're doing in terms of numbers. All right, we're about halfway there, it looks like. Welcome to the student who just arrived. We are doing a quick poll, so hopefully you should see that coming up. And if you just arrived as a student, we would love to have you go ahead and take that quick poll for us. All right, Kiana, why don't we go ahead and end the poll and show the results in the interest of time. All right, so it looks like we have a good mix of students from the sophomore through senior years, as well as a master's student, which is just terrific, or PhD student. And then in terms of information about our career communities and whether you've explored those on our website, it looks like about 62% have, and then 15% want to but haven't yet, and 23% want to learn more. So just a quick info for both students and alumni / presenters. We organize career opportunities by career community to better help students think about what their next steps might be post-graduation. And so specifically this opportunity today is especially geared towards students interested in environment, wildlife, and natural resources as a potential career field. And also I would say to some extent for the government policy, international affairs, and law, because we do have someone who works in the policy realm here. So all right, and then our final question, what have been your biggest struggles in your career journey as of now? So it looks like we're tied here at meeting / networking with professionals in my field of interest and deciding what jobs or fields I'm interested in. Well, folks, you've come to the right place. This is a great opportunity to learn more and hear more from some very distinguished alumni / presenters. So we are really excited to have you with us today. So thank you so much for being here. Okay, Kiana, I think we can close that poll. Thank you so much for running that for us. All right, so the next thing that we want to do, I just want to mention that we are so glad that you all are here. Students, if you could take a moment in the chat to just share what it is that you're majoring in here on campus. If you haven't declared a major, you could share something that you're interested in or you're thinking about majoring in. So just take a moment to share that in the chat. Hopefully the chat should be fairly easy for you all to find and navigate at this point. So, okay. And I want to just start by introducing myself. My name is Sarah Hallis. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the experiential education coordinator here at SuccessWorks. And in my role, I work to plan experiences or opportunities for students to try on or try out what they're interested in doing career-wise, and really just to explore further their interests in terms of their careers. I also do a bit of advising in my role. And so very excited to have you with us today. I also want to introduce Maureen Muldoon. Many of you may know her already. If you don't know her, she is a fantastic resource and mentor to all of you. She is one of our career and internship specialists, so she does advising directly for students in the health, environment, and research communities. She was very sorry that she couldn't be with us today, but she did play an instrumental role in getting this trek going. So we do want to thank her, and certainly you all can follow up with her at a later date to connect if you don't already know Maureen. All right, we want to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we are on, and we encourage you to think about the land that you are on wherever you might find yourself in this moment. The University of Wisconsin-Madison occupies ancestral Ho-Chunk land, a place their nation has called Dejope since time immemorial. In an 1832 treaty, the Ho-Chunk were forced to cede this territory. Decades of ethnic cleansing followed when both the federal and state government repeatedly but unsuccessfully sought to forcibly remove the Ho-Chunk from Wisconsin. This history of colonization informs our shared future of collaboration and innovation. Today, UW-Madison respects the inherent sovereignty of the Ho-Chunk Nation, along with the 11 other First Nations of Wisconsin. We also want to give a special thank you to our presenters. We are so glad that you are with us. Folks, we have a stellar panel. We've just been so blessed in terms of who agreed to come and the work that they do. And just a little anecdote about this, I was at the public service fair and mentioned that we had some alumni coming from Conservation International. And one of the students I was talking to was got very wide-eyed and was very excited about that. So, very excited to have you all here. We do have information about participating alumni, which Kiana has put in the chat. And then students, we're going to drop in the chat as well a link to the preparation information that you received in advance through email. In case you didn't have a chance to look at it, we encourage you to take a quick look at it now. And then if you have any questions, whether they're technical or program related during the trek and the activity in small groups, please send a message to a co-host and we can definitely help you. All right. So next we're going to share a little bit about Zoom. Now, I think at this point, most folks are pretty familiar with Zoom, but we do want to mention a few pieces of information. And as you can see, you know, we've got the unmute button, we've got the start video button. When you are in your small groups, we definitely encourage you students to go ahead and turn your cameras on if you have the capacity to do that in terms of bandwidth, and also unmute to ask questions as there is time to do that. Also encourage you to use the chat box. Just so as a reminder to everyone, once we break into groups, you'll only be able to chat with the people in your small room. So if there's anything you want to share in the large room, we need to do that before moving into small groups. So the breakout rooms, what you're going to do is you're going to click on, so it's down here, I'm going to be circling around it, click on breakout rooms, and then it's going to appear breakout rooms in progress. And you can see these rooms are titled with old information, but essentially whichever room students you were interested in joining, you're just going to click on join right here, and then you'll be able to join that room. Alumni / professionals, we should let you know that Nancy will be moving you into your room, so you don't need to worry about getting there. This is mostly a benefit for the alumni, but it may also be a benefit for the students depending on the activities that the presenters have prepared. You can share your screen, and so you can click on share screen and then it will allow you to share. And at the end, then you can go ahead and hit stop share, which is a red button. And also, if you are very interested in sharing any kind of files directly in here, that is also enabled. You would click on the chat and then there's a link here that says file, and you would just click on that and be able to share any files that you want. So that's a little bit about the functionality of Zoom. So our schedule here, we have the welcome now. We're going to have presenter introductions coming right up. We're going to have some large group Q&A from 4:05 approximately to 4:20. And then at 4:20, we'll break into small groups and do small group introductions, followed by the activities that the alumni have prepared and Q&A time in the small groups. One quick note about small groups, we do want to encourage you to spread out. We want to make sure that all the presenters who've taken time to prepare and be with us today, that they have folks in their room. So if you find yourself in a room that has a lot of people, we would encourage you to try going to a different room, just so we make sure that all presenters have students present. Okay, and this is some information about who's in the breakout rooms. Just a quick note that rather than Maureen being in breakout room 2, that's going to be Nancy Kuyak Ford. But if you want to kind of take note for yourself, maybe if you're a student, take a screenshot of this or a picture of this really quickly, so you know what the options are. Again, this will be in the breakout information, but just in case you have a particular person you want to talk with after reading their bios. Okay. And that is it in terms of our slides here. So I'm going to go ahead and end the slideshow and stop my share.
So now we're going to move into having each of our panelists introduce themselves and their organization and role. If our panelists have any audiovisual materials they'd like to share with us, sharing screen is enabled so you can easily do so or use the chat box. Back to you, Sarah.
All right, thank you so much, Nancy. So we are going to have our panelists introduce themselves alphabetically and by organization. So we're going to start with Camille, and then I will go ahead and call on each panelist before you speak. So you don't have to remember the order or remember the alphabet or anything today. So go ahead, Camille, and there's a few questions that we asked you to prepare as a prompt. So the first is, tell us your job title and a brief description of your current work, and please explain any acronyms that you might use, as those aren't necessarily familiar to all students. And then share your academic background and a short introduction about your career journey. And then finally, give us one example of how your organization has adapted in COVID times. And Kiana did put that in the chat for each of you presenters, so you have that readily available. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Camille at this point.
All right, thank you so much, Sarah. So yes, I'm Camille Bruin, and I am a water quality biologist with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, otherwise known as DNR. So I perform river and stream surveys, includes collecting water samples, collecting fish and identifying them, measuring them, weighing them. We perform habitat assessments and temperature monitoring, and also collect macroinvertebrates as well. I also provide support to counties and producer-led groups, as well as watershed associations. And we have a bunch of volunteers that perform monitoring throughout the state. So we work closely with them and train them and get information from volunteers as well. And then we do a bunch of outreach events as part of the water resources program to students, counties, different groups that may want information on water resources throughout our state. In the winter months, we kind of do some planning of what we're going to do for the next year. And then we write reports on our water resources, things that we've monitored in the previous years. So my academic background, I went to a small high school just west of Madison, and I came to UW in 2006. I was intending on studying biotechnology and genetics, but I realized that I didn't want to spend my life in a lab, and I just decided to do something else. And I actually found the limnology courses, and those revolve around water. And I was always swimming and lifeguarding growing up. And I was like, well, this is a perfect fit. So I switched my major to biological aspects of conservation. And I also added the certificate in environmental studies. And the Nelson Institute was a key role in helping me with school and career development. And they gave me tons of opportunities to grow. And they really stress networking. So I networked with staff at the Center for Limnology, I worked as an intern and I performed various surveys on the Madison chain of lakes. And then when I graduated, I was a limited term employee with the Center for Limnology for a couple years. And then I finally networked and worked hard enough, and I started a limited term employee job with the DNR. And I worked as the National Rivers and Streams Assessment Coordinator for a few years. And then from there, I moved to the Plymouth area, and I was the Sheboygan River Area of Concern Coordinator. And then I finally landed a permanent position as a water resources streams biologist, and I was over in the La Crosse area until 2019, and then I moved to the Fitchburg office. So I love my career, and I'm really grateful for all the opportunities and all the mentors and everything that have helped me get to where I am today. Definitely a little bit of movement though, and it kind of was necessary to get where I wanted to be. And then an example of how the DNR has adapted in COVID times. We pretty much went to all telework for a while, and it was kind of difficult in the summer of 2020 because we perform a ton of field work. We couldn't do things where we were really close. We had to drive in separate vehicles, but we worked as much as we could. And then in 2021, we were able to complete the work that we did not do in 2020. But during COVID times, I feel like we had a lot of team meetings, and we just kept in touch through Skype and just talking on the phone, which was really great. That's the one thing that I like about being in the office is the connections and working closely with my coworkers. So I felt like we kept a pretty good working relationship, which really helped while being at home. All right. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, everybody. I'm navigating 3 screens, and so I have to get my mouse to the right location to unmute. Thank you so much, Camille. That was really informative. And, I just really want to call out the theme that you talked about around networking, right? And building those connections. And you never know who's in the room, and you never know who you're going to have the opportunity to interact with and meet. So really taking advantage of those opportunities to build relationships, mostly because it's fun, and also because it helps you learn and grow and develop both as a student and as a professional. So thank you so much for that. All right, so we are going to have our next presenter from the DNR talk, and that is Jody. And hopefully I said your name right, but please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep, my name is Jody Piotr, and I also work at the DNR, and I am in the Jeff 2 building, which is right downtown Madison near the UW campus. And the program that I work in is the Remediation and Redevelopment program. And in that program, we oversee people who are responsible for cleaning up contamination to soil, groundwater, soil vapor. And my position at the DNR is the Brownfields Outreach and Policy Section Chief. So in my position within our program, there's really 3 components. One of them is overseeing brownfields redevelopment, so promoting and developing tools that help communities take sites that are blighted, that are maybe abandoned and contaminated, and help them clean up those properties and get them back into reuse. So they are contributing to the economy, to the tax base. Another part of what I do is a lot of outreach to our stakeholders and customers. So it could be letting people know about contamination in their area. It could be working with environmental consultants and helping them navigate the investigation and cleanup process. And then the third part is a lot of policy. So we have a series of rules that we use, or that our customers use, to navigate the investigation and cleanup program. And we develop guidance documents and tools to help environmental consultants navigate through our rules and our statutes that they need to comply with. We also draft rules or revise rules for our program when we have a scope statement to do so. My background, I went to UW and I have a degree in geology and geophysics, and almost but not quite also a degree in history, but I didn't quite finish it, only the geology. I'm a professional geologist as well, and I spent the first over 20 years of my career in environmental consulting before I went to the DNR and started working in public service. So as a consultant, I started as a staff geologist and then worked my way up, a lot of networking, like Sarah said, along the way, and eventually ended my consulting career as a environmental services manager at a consulting firm. I joined the DNR about 2 years ago, and I love being in public service and working, putting the technical, the geology component together with that outreach and policy. It's kind of a interesting mixture of things to piece together in your career, I suppose. And as Camille mentioned, the DNR, once COVID happened, everything, we were doing all of our work at home. And so we had to adapt a lot of our public outreach and like public meetings that our section in my program holds to Zoom and Skype. And that was definitely a challenge for us at first, but now I think that we've realized we have another tool in our toolbox for conducting outreach and reaching our customers and stakeholders and citizens that are affected by contamination. So yeah, I think I hit everything there. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Jody. It's really interesting to hear about how you pivoted in your career, right? And certainly that's been a theme of the last year and a half, is all of us having to pivot and adapt and, and of course, due to circumstances that we wish hadn't happened, right? And one can say that also for the environmental realities that we face in terms of climate change and whatnot. But it's a good skill to have in our toolbox nonetheless to be able to pivot effectively. So thank you so much for that. All right, so we are going to go to our next set of presenters here. Interesting, Jody, that you talked about consulting. Our next presenter, Erica, is an environmental consultant. And so I'll let you introduce yourself and share a little bit about your story. Thanks, Erica.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm actually going to share my screen. I just have a few slides prepared for today. So bear with me while I get that set up. And if I could have someone confirm that they see the presentation.
Looks great.
Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. So my name is Erica Christensen, and I'm a wildlife biologist for Stantec Consulting Services. I'll speak a little bit about Stantec first before going into my specific role. So Stantec is actually an architecture firm. It's a global company headquartered in Edmonton, Canada. But there's offices really all over the world, and particularly a lot of offices in North America, both the United States and Canada. My local office is in Cottage Grove, Wisconsin, which is just east of Madison. And our office specializes in environmental services. So everyone in my office is either some type of biologist or ecosystems restorations technician, wetland delineators, but there are other offices across the company that have specializations in other things such as transportation, community development, water. There's really a whole suite of different business lines in our company. So my specific role as a wildlife biologist, my specialization is in threatened and endangered species, particularly regarding permitting associated with that for capital projects, especially transmission line projects and transportation projects. So I do a lot of things that range from going out and doing habitat assessments to determine if certain areas are suitable for threatened and endangered species, It could be species-specific surveys to confirm presence or absence ahead of a project, and then preparing reports to send to agencies such as the DNR for their review and concurrence, and coordinating with agencies like the DNR, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, to get all the approvals and permits associated with potential take of endangered and threatened species ahead of a project moving forward. So a little bit about me. I might be different from the rest of our panelists here, but I did not go to University of Wisconsin. I'm originally from Florida. My hometown is Boca Raton, Florida, which is Southeast Florida. And my education, I received a bachelor's of science in 2016 from the University of Florida. My major was wildlife ecology and conservation. And for those of you that may not be aware, University of Florida is located in Gainesville, which is north central Florida, about an hour southwest of Jacksonville, if that puts it in perspective. So once I left college, I stayed in Florida for a while, worked for the state, and then in 2019, I moved to Madison, Wisconsin. So my career journey has kind of taken me all over the place, and I would consider my career journey starting as a freshman in college, because I got involved with internships and organizations that got me real life experience in my career field that allowed me to pursue full-time jobs after graduation. So I'll kind of work through all that fairly quickly here. So while I was in school, I was very involved with professional organizations, particularly the Wildlife Society. So the University of Florida had a student chapter of the Wildlife Society, which I believe UW-Madison does as well. I know Stevens Point does. And as part of that, I was the freshman coordinator, and then I became president in my sophomore year, and really learned how to network both people within my department, the wildlife ecology department, so with professors, staff, but also networking with their grad students. And grad students in wildlife ecology are doing their own research projects, and they need a lot of help. And so I really had an opportunity to get to know the grad students and had the opportunity to volunteer on their projects to help with their research. And so I helped to do game camera studies looking at fox squirrel habitat use. I got to do drift fence surveys for snakes and other herptiles in Florida. And it really brought a lot of broad experience that I got to put on my resume. And by being involved with the Wildlife Society, I also got to attend conferences that the Wildlife Society gave scholarships to students to attend, and networked with, full-time professionals in my career field. And that was actually how I earned my first internship, was purely through networking. The president of the Florida chapter of the Wildlife Society contacted me and asked if I was interested in doing a short-time internship with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to study Florida grasshopper sparrows, which is one of the most endangered species in the United States. And through that, I got to do surveys for this endangered bird. I got to work with landowners. I got to live on the Florida Panther National Wildlife Refuge. And it gave me this whole suite of experience that I wouldn't have otherwise had the opportunity to get if it weren't for networking with professional organizations. So I kind of continued staying involved in things when I went back to school during the fall and spring semesters. And then my sophomore year, or the summer after my sophomore year, I got a job with Klamath Bird Observatory, which is actually based in Oregon, but my research project was in Northern California, studying, it was nest searching for species of birds to measure riparian response from restoration efforts. So that was a really interesting job, and you learn a lot of what you like and what you don't like from doing these various field jobs. And then my junior year, I worked for the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, which is the DNR equivalent in Florida. And I worked as a camp counselor for one of the state's youth hunt camps. So I got to teach youth ages 9 through 16, how to, to work through hunter safety courses, how to shoot firearms, how to read signs of wildlife, and the ethics of hunting and just general wildlife identification. And that was a really rewarding experience. And the culmination of all these things led to earning full-time jobs after graduation. And right out of school, I got a full-time position with the Florida Fish and Wildlife, doing it was in their land use planning office, where I was reviewing permits in Florida, development permits, and commenting as the agency on what recommendations or requirements those developers need to follow to avoid or minimize impacts to species in Florida. And then from there, I worked for the Florida Department of Transportation as a wildlife subject matter expert, and kind of facilitating the entire state, essentially, DOT, on how to incorporate best management practices for avoiding impacts to wildlife, and reviewing project level impacts as well. And all those things led to my current role at Stantec. And in consulting, you can work on so many different things. So you really never know what's going to be thrown at you. And then quickly, how has Stantec adapted in COVID times? So right as COVID hit, we quickly transitioned to working from home, which has been really great and offered a lot of flexibility for staff. But there's also the opportunity to go into the office if you need to. And, a lot of our work is field-based. And so people still need to be going out in the field. And one adaptation that our company made is to ensure safety of all our employees. They created this Fit for Duty app where every day you submit how you're feeling, whether you're experiencing COVID symptoms, and it offers a really quick avenue to do contact tracing. So if someone in the office, registered that they were going in the office that day, and then later that week they tested positive for COVID, they can see who else went in the office that day. So that's been really, really great to kind of have those assurances. So thanks, Sarah. I'll turn it back to you, and I'll stop sharing my screen as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for bearing with me with the unmuting and muting. Yeah, very, very interesting story there. And just want to reiterate for students the power of networking and making connections, and how that can lead to some amazing opportunities. And, Eric, I just think it's great that you got involved in a student organization that you were passionate about, and connected with graduate students, and that led to, just some experiences. Experience really is the best teacher. And we might think we want to do certain things, and then we have an experience and realize, oh, that's not actually what I thought it was at all. I just want to throw out here for the students in the space, this year, speaking of experiences, we're launching a new job shadow program, and we have quite a number of environmentally related opportunities that are available. So be on the lookout for a follow-up email from me. You can sign up to participate in that job shadow program. It's going to be over winter break, so there's no conflict, at least in terms of academics. There might be some other conflicts in terms of vacations or whatnot. Excuse me, but we certainly encourage you to get connected to that opportunity. Okay, so we are going to move on to our final two presenters, who are both joining us from remotely as well from Conservation International. And we're going to start with Kame, and hopefully I said that correctly.
You did. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah.
Well, it's lovely to be here. Hi, everyone. My name is Kame Westerman. I work at Conservation International in our Arlington headquarters. I'm the Director of Gender and Safeguards. And I started at CI about 8.5 years ago to essentially start our gender program, to start a focused program that focuses on gender and women's empowerment. It involves a lot of capacity building and training with our staff around the world. We have over 1,000 staff in 25 to 30 different countries, something like that. Doing a lot of coaching and mentoring and also technical support to projects, and really ultimately kind of having a shift in how we think about conservation and really bringing out the social part of conservation. So I did my undergrad in Madison. I'm from Dodgeville, which is about an hour west of Madison. And, when I was there, I never would have imagined that I would become a gender specialist or gender advisor. That was not on my radar at all. I did I got my degree in biological aspects of conservation and quite honestly, floundered a bit in undergrad trying to decide what to major in. And I remember one of the reasons I chose that as a major was because I only had to take one semester of chemistry. I really had a hard time with chemistry, and I was like, you know what, I'll just do biological aspects of conservation. And it turned out to be fantastic. I really loved it. After I graduated, I went directly into the Peace Corps, and I was in Madagascar for 2 years working on community-based conservation. I lived in a small village, 4 or 5 hours from the nearest other volunteer, learned Malagasy, worked on rice farming and forest conservation. And really, that was where I feel like I learned so much of this hands-on international development, international conservation stuff that even to this day, I sort of often will think back to those times. And it also, to speak to networking, has been a really great avenue to network with other returned Peace Corps volunteers. After that, I worked for a short bit with the U.S. Forest Service here in Washington, D.C. again, specifically in the international program side. And then went back and got my master's degree at the University of Maryland, which is just outside of DC. There my focus again was conservation biology. What I thought was really neat about that program was that, and I actually considered going back to Madison for my master's degree as well in a similar field, really went back and forth on the two and ultimately ended up with Maryland, which I'm very thankful for because I was so close to DC, we were able to engage with a lot of the NGOs that are here. So I did an internship with the World Wildlife Fund. I'm still in touch with people that I met at that point, did an internship with Rare Conservation, and just got to go to so many talks and just learn, from all these NGOs, nonprofits in the area. And obviously my interest was in international work, so that was really helpful. But I realized I needed more time overseas. So if you're interested in international conservation or international development work, you realize that you kind of need to put in a certain number of years overseas to kind of show that you can do it. And you learn so much when you're over there. So I moved to Belize for 6 months and worked with a local indigenous organization there, and then went back to Madagascar for another 2 years and worked with a conservation organization focused mostly on marine conservation. And it was during that time that I really had my aha moment about gender. And I'll share more about that in our small group work. But just to say that was really sort of the turning point for me in my career. And I really think back to that moment as well quite a bit. And so when I moved back to DC after Madagascar, I joined CI shortly after that. Again, they were looking for a gender specialist who had a lot of very strong conservation background and who had worked in the field quite a bit. And I think the fact that I, am a conservation biologist by training, and I can relate to a lot of my colleagues. I think that's been very helpful over the years, but it was a big learning curve for me too on gender and just learning, kind of getting deeper into that area. I just also wanted to mention that, like others, I don't think I've ever gotten a job where I didn't know somebody already that kind of got me in. So again, that networking is so important. And then the example of how CI has adapted to COVID times. I mean, we as an international organization, we certainly did video conferencing before or phone calls, but it wasn't deeply embedded within the culture of the organization. And very quickly, once COVID hit and we all were in lockdown, we started using video conferencing all the time. And it has really, I think, transformed the relationships that we're able to have and the conversations we have. And it's just a lot more inclusive. I think before, you know, the people at headquarters might get together and have a conversation and relay it to other team members. But now, you know, we're just able to really open up. I work on my close team. I have people in Hawaii and Australia and London. So everyone's really all over the world, which is great. So I'll leave it at that and look forward to more discussions in the small group. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks so much, Kame. It was great to hear from you. And I think it's fascinating to consider the intersection of conservation and environmental issues and how they relate to social issues and identity issues. So thank you for sharing a little bit about that. Our final guest for us today is Miguel. And Miguel, I'm going to turn it over to you to share a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you for the invitation to be here. I realize I'm the only international student here, and that's a pleasure to share my experience with you. I have a long and wonderful connection with the University of Wisconsin and I hope to share that experience with you tonight. So my name is Miguel Morales. I'm originally from Paraguay in South America, and currently I'm a senior vice president with NCI, and what I do is I lead two agencies within NCI. One is for the Global Environment Facility, the GEF, and the other one is the Green Climate Fund, the GCF. And I'm based here in the DC area with Kame, and I've been with CI for 15 years now, basically since I finished my PhD at UW. So briefly, the Global Environment Facility is the largest multilateral public funding facility that provides funding, receives funding from governments, mainly developed countries' governments, to then provide funding to developing countries that are eligible to receive funding to meet their commitments to the international environmental conventions. And the main conventions are the Convention on Biological Diversity, the Desertification Convention, the Climate Change Convention, and several other international agreements that have to do with waste and harmful chemicals. On the other side, the Green Climate Fund, the GCF, is the largest multilateral public funding that exists, and it's been around for a shorter period of time now. And they provide the Green Climate Fund, or the GCF, provides funding for projects that implement actions for climate change mitigation and adaptation. And what I do within CI, believe it or not, is fundraising, basically. And what we do is we help governments from developing countries that are eligible to access funding from these two funds, the GEF and the GCF. We help them prepare proposals that are aligned with the strategic plans of these two funds, and also civil society organizations to access funds from these two funds, or grant and non-grant instruments for these two funds, for projects that have to do with biodiversity conservation, sustainable use of natural resources, restoration of degraded lands and waters, climate change mitigation and adaptation, and to manage international waters more sustainably. Currently, we were created, the first agency for the GF was created with NCI at the end of 2013. And over the years, and currently, we manage 43 projects in about 26 different countries. And our portfolio of projects today is about $200 million. So that's the portfolio of projects that we manage today from these two agencies. In terms of my career and how I got here where I am, since I have memory, I always wanted to work with animals. In nature, I always loved animals, domestic and wild animals. And basically, I always wanted to, what I remember from the first few things that when people ask me, what do you want to do? What do you want to become? I always said that I wanted to be a veterinarian to help sick animals. So fast forward, I went to school in my country and I got a doctorate in veterinary sciences. And I thought I was going to be working mainly with domestic animals. And I love surgery and I wanted to be a surgeon. But I ended up, where the money is in my country for that profession is working with livestock production. And the whole question for me was, do I want to spend my time making sure that animals get to the slaughterhouse healthy, and that's the future that I'm gonna be doing, or what I'm gonna be doing in the future. And there was an opportunity, and it was through networking in my country. There was a scientist from the US working for the Wildlife Conservation Society, and he was studying one of the wild pigs, native pigs in my country, and he needed an intern. And so I applied for it, and they told me, well, you didn't get the internship, but there is an organization in the country that will be very interested to having you as an intern. And that was a partnership within the Peace Corps, actually came, the government of Paraguay and the Nature Conservancy. And they took me as an intern, and I did an internship for a couple of summers there. And that's how I got connected with the world of conservation. And I said, I want to work in conservation. I love domestic animals, but I really want to work with wildlife. And that's how I basically started shifting my career and becoming a conservationist. And I got a job with an NGO, the largest conservation NGO in my country, and I worked with them. I was the director of the largest reserve, a tropical reserve in my country. We started from zero. I enjoyed very much my best times, I would say, working with communities and indigenous communities around the protected area and with rangers in making sure that we were managing the area as a protected area properly. And from there, I thought, well, I know a lot about the field. I think what I needed was more the theoretical background of what I was doing. And I decided to apply for a school. And I got into the Conservation Biology and Sustainable Development program at UW-Madison. I finished that. I went back to my country. I worked for USAID, the International Agency for Development, the US Agency for Development. And then I wanted to work internationally. And I said, well, in order to be competitive in a world that's super competitive, if I don't have a PhD, most likely I'm not going to be able to get international position. And my master's was not enough to compete successfully. And so I came back and I went to the university and did my PhD in what used to be called land resources. It's called, I believe now, Environment and Resources program. And after that, when I was done with my research and my coursework, and I have to say that I TA'd for 4 years there. I was teaching conservation biology and field ornithology, and that was probably one of the best experiences to working with students. And then I applied for a job and with CI, with Conservation International, and that's how I got a job, and I'm still around. I've been with CI for 15 years. Some of the examples on how we adapted to COVID times, Kame mentioned, and all the other speakers that spoke before me, they mentioned working remotely. And that is one of the things that we have been doing since the beginning of the pandemic. I have not returned to the office other than but just to do very specific things and for very short period of time. But I just wanted to mention that actually working remotely has been one of the most productive times for my team. I oversee a team of 13 people. We have raised a record number of money from the GEF and the GCF during the pandemic. And regarding the projects, because what we do is we oversee the implementation of all these projects that have been approved. Interestingly, at the beginning of the pandemic, when we knew this was not going to be a short thing, what we started to do was we contacted each of our projects and asked them to think about the medium term and tell us, we know that you cannot go to the field, and that's where most of the projects are being actually delivered. But we asked them to prioritize those actions that were part of the projects that did not require going to the field. And those were training, desktop analysis, knowledge management, and dissemination. And that's how we were able to adapt also in the field. So there has been, we just concluded our annual performance evaluation of our projects. And I have to say that I'm very happy to see that we haven't fallen too far behind with the implementation of our projects, because very early in the process, we started asking them and working with them to prioritize those activities and actions that do not require going to the field. There are some countries that are opening up and that they're starting to go to the field, but it's not throughout our portfolio. So I think I cover everything, Sarah, that I was supposed to cover, but happy to expand later. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Miguel, and just fantastic to hear from you as well. I think it's interesting to think about how working in the environmental area can be field work, but it can also be other kinds of work, right? That there's a full scope of opportunity there. So we are going to move into a Q&A. Now, I do want to mention that we are, because we have such amazing panelists, we have less time for Q&A than anticipated. However, you'll be in small groups soon and be able to ask all those great questions that you've been thinking about. I am going to just ask one quick question because it's good for all the students to hear this. And then if I could get one person from each organization to answer very briefly, that would be great. And then I'm going to ask one student to ask a question, and then the rest of the questions can be asked in the smaller groups. So my question for you all is, describe an entry-level role or job title that students might apply to in your organization. So if I could hear from 1% DNR, 1% at Conservation International, and also Stantec Consulting. And if there isn't one, you can let us know that too. Whoever wants to start.
I can go first, if that's okay.
Sure.
So I would say internships are very good opportunities, and they're not full-time jobs, but they're a great opportunity to learn about the organization. But now that with COVID, it's going to be more difficult to interact and network with the staff. But internships, the other two levels are coordinators and managers. Those are the two that are entry-level project positions with Conservation International. And internships can be good stepping stones to then apply for those positions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We'll turn it over to someone from, I think, Erica, you were ready to share. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll speak to entry-level positions to our local office in the Madison area. So because our office is an environmental services office, it's all environmental related positions. Really, there's two different sides of our office. There's an ecosystems restorations side that focuses on habitat management, a lot of hands-on stuff, working with different tools or equipment. And so there's seasonal ecosystem restoration technician positions that are available both for current students who have the ability to fit that in, maybe in the summer or something, but also recent graduates as well. And then on the other side, so there's our ecosystems restorations group, and then we also have our kind of our consulting group. And there's ability to assist with wetland delineations or other surveys like species surveys. You could tag along with bird surveys. Safety is really important to Stantec, so we always really try to have 2 people in the field, and sometimes we don't have enough, you know, current employees to manage that, and so we do big seasonal hires, particularly in the summer, to assist with those field efforts.
Excellent, thank you. And does one of you from the DNR mind weighing in as well?
Sure, I can weigh in. A lot of folks that start at the DNR might start in a limited term employment or LTE position, although there are a lot of other entry-level positions that are permanent that we also often offer, but that seems to be one of those routes that many people take, is through an LTE position in the area that they're interested in.
All right, great. Thank you so much. We do want to allow space for one question from a student. You can either put it in the chat, or you can come here on mic if you'd like to raise your hand and come here on mic. Is there a question that is coming up right now from any student? I will come look at the chat here. If not, I think what we will go ahead and do is start the breakouts, and Nancy is going to get that coordinated for us. And again, just as a reminder to students, we would love to have you all. We want to make sure that all 3 groups have students in them. So if you find yourself in a room and there is, you know, there are several people, we encourage you to check out another room. And just so everybody knows, we are going to be ending in those small breakout rooms. So Kiana is going to put a link in the chat here for you all to check out. As students, we really want to encourage you to fill out our survey at the end of today. You don't need to do it right now, but again, at the end of today. So thank you so much to all of our presenters. This has been a fantastic intro conversation, and we're looking forward to continuing the conversation in small groups. So presenters, Nancy will move you. Students, you choose where you want to go, and go ahead and go into the room that you would like to go. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone.
Nancy, can you put me into my breakout room? I can't figure out how to go in.
Yep, once again. Alexis, Eli, can I help you find a space?
Yeah, I'm a little rusty on joining a breakout room. If you could just let me know how to do that. I see them.
Yeah. The breakout button should be the lower bottom right-hand side. If you click on that, and then you'll see your name on the side, and you want to move yourself to like
perfect
one of the breakouts and just click join, and it will move you there.
Thank you.
Yeah. Alexis, do you need help?
That helped me too, so thank you.
Okay, great.